And we are live. I always like to start a bit slow to allow people to filter in. But welcome, everyone. Welcome all future listeners. This is the Optimist podcast. So we are a media company. We cover all things Superchain, all networks, all protocols built on those networks. We have a weekly newsletter. We have a weekly podcast, which you're listening to right now. And for the podcast, we're partnered with Revelo Intel, who provides written notes following each episode. Okay, so this week, I am talking to Marshall, CEO of Metallicus and founder of Metal L2. I'm very, very excited to kick this off. So welcome, Marshall. Thanks for your time. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Charles. It's great to be here.
Of course. This is very exciting. We obviously, networks, Superchain networks are our main focus. So it seems like the last month or two, we've had a lot of activity, a lot of development on the OP stack. So super exciting to talk to a brand new Superchain participant. And so let's get into it. Okay, so what I want to start with is the usual, just a quick introduction. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a brief overview of how you got to where you are now and building out Metal L2.
Yeah, absolutely. I started very early in the crypto space, going all the way back to late 2009 when I first discovered Bitcoin, and was kind of a hobbyist for the first few years. I used to live in Boston, Massachusetts, and made the move to California about 13 years ago. And I was always fascinated with decentralized networks. I went to school at Northeastern University where Sean Fanning and Napster, was over there, and I was very familiar with all the decentralized networks, from very early start. When BitTorrent launched, I think it was 2002, right around the time I went to college, obsessed with that. And I always thought that was really interesting because that was kind of as the internet shifted from dial-up internet to broadband around that time. And, it was an interesting time to be a young person in college because now we had this really fast internet. But really fast internet couldn't be taken advantage of until decentralized networks like BitTorrent. And that led the way for all the streaming and everything we know today, like what we're using right now, the streaming video technology. But is there technology for streaming money? And in 2009, I discovered that because of my interest in BitTorrent, decentralized networks, just browsing the web, and I was fascinated. I went down that rabbit hole shortly after I moved to California. And by 2013, I started my first crypto startup, so about 11 years ago. It was called QuickCoin. I just wanted to make Bitcoin easy and simple to use, and I integrated a crypto wallet with Facebook, and it took off. And since then, I've worked on many different projects. I was one of the early team members at Stellar Development Foundation. I'm a big proponent fan of Dogecoin. I work with the Dogecoin Foundation, and I'm just a huge crypto fan. I'm not a maxi of any one thing. I believe in freedom. I believe in technology, and it's one of the things I love about the Superchain. And flash forward to 2016, I formed Metallicus. I met my co-founder, Glenn Marion, at a company I worked at previously called Block.io, where he built the first Dogecoin web wallet, and we bonded over our passion of Dogecoin and wallets and technology. We started Metallicus in 2016 with the original vision of Metallicus started very simply with building a Venmo for crypto. And now Venmo has crypto, right? So we've come quite a long ways. And that vision has evolved over time to become the digital banking network, which I think we're going to talk about today. But in the very beginning of crypto, from the very early years, there was this what they call cryptocurrency anarchist ethos, which was down with the banks. But the reality is that the banks have existed for thousands of years, and it is a system to move money. It's a foundational layer of trust in our societies, right? So banks are not going away. It's like saying, when we were, flashback to even before 2002, when people used to go to Blockbuster Video Rental and rent a VHS, and people said, oh, someday this will go away. They were right. But did movies go away? No, right? And money is not going anywhere. The idea of banking is not going anywhere. And so how do banks and the internet evolve to work together? And that was the really interesting thing to me because I was a longtime internet nerd and guy that would love to play around with these things. And when I saw that money was becoming decentralized and it was becoming a protocol, I heard my calling. I want to be a part of that. That is the most exciting, interesting, world-changing thing that I think I could be a part of. And I was just fascinated with it. And so formed Metallicus in 2016, and it's evolved over time from that early vision of the crypto payments app to become the digital banking network to bridge TradFi and DeFi.
Beautiful. Great intro. And it's cool to hear you're such an OG. I'm a economics graduate. And so I got an economics degree, and I started getting into DeFi just during my degree, and it made so much sense to me. And what I really loved about it, or what sort of pulled me into it, is like the programmability of it, and the sort of non-biased nature of like the structures that you could create, the money systems that you can create, economic systems, and it made a ton of sense to me. So really, really cool. So actually, that was a really good segue into what I wanted to talk about first, because obviously Metal L2 is the focus of this conversation, but Metallicus as a company, you guys are building out on so many different verticals. So I wanted to start by providing a bit of context for Metal L2, and sort of color in a bit of the background before painting a full picture of where Metal lives and how it's going to contribute to the Superchain. So I know this is a loaded question, but I was hoping you could just give a brief history lesson on Metallicus and what you've built out. Maybe you could start with the Metal DAO, and talk a bit about the other networks and other infrastructure that you're building. I know it's a lot to handle in one question, but just do your best, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so at Metallicus, we really pride ourselves on our engineering and our ability to ship products and to be really customer centric. Our tagline is actually building the most customer centric digital asset banking network. Because at the end of the day, what are we doing in crypto? We're building better financial technology. So we have to do things better. We have to be more empowering for our users. We have to have better customer centric vision. Because if we're not, then we're not moving forward with blockchain, right? And that's something I realized very early on. Starting, with our first app, MetalPay, that we launched in 2018, the vision of this was to provide just consumer digital banking, crypto payment services, and to have a licensed platform to work on. We knew that was going to become very important. So we launched that in 2018, and since then we've been obtaining our money transmission licenses state by state. I'm proud to say we're live in 48 states, so it's most of the United States. So some of the last hard ones together, for example, New York and so forth, thanks that everyone knows. But this was some of the hard work, and I knew that we needed to start this early because it takes years, and there's a reason why there are so few licensed platforms in the US, because it's very hard to achieve that licensing. So we started that years ago, and since 2018, we built quite a lot. We started at the same time that MetalPay launched. We started with the Metal DAO in 2017, and that was one of the very early first ERC20s kind of to appear out there. There were some before us like Augur and some of these, but these were some of the first ERC20s appearing on Ethereum. And I remember going to see Vitalik in 2014 at Coin Summit give a speech about launching Ethereum. The very early days, it was really cool to be there, but we've really come a long way since then. And when Ethereum first launched, we started with the Metal DAO. We wanted to just start with giving people an easy way to earn crypto, because maybe you're not familiar with Bitcoin. Maybe you don't want to buy some Bitcoin or some Ethereum or Dogecoin. Maybe you just want to dabble and play. So how do you show up for free? And MetalPay was that. You could earn a little bit of Metal DAO token for 3 years from 2018 to 2021. The app would give you cash back in crypto. And that was really awesome. Millions of Metal were distributed through that mechanism, and it really created a robust, decentralized network around Metal DAO and a community around that. And then flash forward to 2020, we launched XPRNetwork because we recognized that we needed a fast, feeless blockchain. We wanted to start to do more things on chain, and we wanted to create a faster, feeless network. And so we built on some of the technologies of Antelope. Again, being agnostic to technologies, we love Ethereum, we love Bitcoin, we love Dogecoin. We just are open to everything, right? So we built out XPRNetwork, and that was a really incredible, to this day, is an amazing crypto experience. From there, we built out an exchange platform called MetalX. And this is before Optimism. This is before the Superchain. But we had that vision of fast, free payments, and I realized I couldn't do it on the EVM at that time. We started to build some of this tech, and we built the MetalX exchange, and that was we started that in 2020. I think it launched in 2022. It takes a while to build an exchange, and since then we've also built a whole platform and ecosystem around that. We recognize, hey, this is a great platform, but it's not connected into the greater Ethereum ecosystem, EVM. And also, how do we bridge the banks and TradFi networks to the crypto space and vice versa? Because historically, there's been this wall here where it's been very difficult. And sometimes you could even have your bank account shut down. As a crypto company, it's hard to find a corporate bank partner. There's so many difficulties. If you want to move your crypto to cash, you might have to make several stops and get hit with multiple fees and wait days, maybe have your money held up many times. That's the case. So how do we make a better experience? How do we integrate with TradFi, right? And how do we make this a seamless experience? So we launched Metal Blockchain in 2022 because we realized that banks and credit unions and financial institutions may not launch their technologies on the public chain right away. And we saw that in years prior with the experimentation with Hyperledger and other private networks like Corda, but those networks didn't connect to the greater crypto ecosystem. So at the end of the day, although they're very interesting, the real interest is about connecting the banks and the credit unions and the crypto world to the traditional institutions. And so we came up with this idea of, hey, what if we could give the banks their own private ledgers that could talk to each other and could also talk to the public networks? And Metal Blockchain was born. And we found incredible traction with that because these institutions and banks and credit unions, they are looking at this technology. They are very interested in connecting it, but it's more in line with the regulated institution to have their own network that they control. And even though we want to bridge this gap, it's difficult sometimes when, for example, the bank doesn't maybe have control over the decentralized network. So there has to be that intermediary step. And that's where we found a lot of success with Metal Blockchain. And as we built that out, we realized there's one piece missing here. We need to connect these private ledgers that now can all talk to each other with the greater crypto ecosystem. And what better place to do that than the Superchain? And that's where Metal L2 comes in. It's interesting because I have known Jin, the founder, we go way back in the crypto space. And so when I saw she was working on this project, I thought this is going to be something really interesting because I know her and everything that she's done is really awesome. But also I could see, it's aligned with Vitalik's vision, who's a genius, and the Ethereum Foundation, the people behind Ethereum. They are really, there's many crypto networks, but Ethereum is leading the way in smart contracts and programmability, right? And so when we saw that opportunity, we said, hey, let's become part of that super chain and let's bridge Metal L2 and Metal Blockchain in a way that they can communicate. In the future, I don't want to have to go through all these intermediaries. I want to have my bank, and I want to be able to deposit and withdraw stablecoin from that bank. I want to be able to keep my crypto assets with a bank if I can, right? That's what makes sense. And we're slowly getting there, but we need these technologies like Metallicus is building with Metal L2, Metal Blockchain, and our ecosystem around that to make it possible. And there's a lot of other players in the space doing this. And another big part of it too is that digital identity. That's something that I think that I didn't mention. We're building digital identity tools as well around all of this stuff. But how do we preserve the privacy of the users? And how do we keep that element where you're empowered to have your own data while connecting to the blockchain and interacting with your bank and smart contracts and dApps. And I think there's been a very kind of visceral reaction to this where people are nervous about their privacy about these things. But there is a way we can do it. There's a way we can actually have it better than it was before. We shouldn't have to do a photo ID every time we sign up to a platform. We shouldn't have to enter our SSN into every platform and have it get compromised and find out through our credit bureau that our information has been leaked. Crypto solves a lot of these problems. So that's where we see the big opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, there's a ton to unpack there, and I'm excited to dive in. But I completely commend you guys on taking on this problem. And you know, I didn't know until like last week how long you've been sort of working on this and working towards the goal that you're kind of outlining. But it's a contentious sort of topic. It's a contentious problem. But I completely agree. I think, you know, the people that say, you know, banks are done for, we need to, you know, not have any banks anymore, and every individual are their own bank. I mean, okay, great. You know, that would be pretty awesome. It's a pretty utopian vision. And also banks are very useful. And so, you know, I think sort of, you know, the first step, or how we can actually make progress in integrating blockchain tech and crypto into the broader economy is doing solving problems like the one that Metallicus is trying to solve, and trying to have an avenue, build avenues for banks to be able to actually utilize this tech and live alongside you know, public blockchains. So yeah, really cool. So with that, let's jump into MetalL2, which is obviously why we're here. I'm going to throw up this banner that I made. The banking layer. So yeah, given that sort of context that you've just given, can you expand on MetalL2's offering and what it really means to be, you know, the banking layer of the Superchain, and what people can expect with what MetalL2 is offering in conjunction with the Metal blockchain? I hope that was specific enough. I know it was a pretty broad question, but yeah.
Yeah, that was great. You know, so one of the things I'll say about the Superchain is it's incredible. It's so collaborative. Within the Superchain, you have different networks, and each one kind of has its own kind of niche and specialty. And this is, you know, it's very different than anything I've ever seen in crypto over a decade of, you know, because one of the things that I see more often than not, and I think it's unfortunate, I've been, you know, preaching this message, but we have enough enemies to fight. And we're finding that out today. We see that. You can see it on X. You can read about it. You can see what's going on. But there are people, very powerful people, that want to crush crypto. But crypto is a Pandora's box that once it is opened, like the internet, there is no closing it. There's only restricting people's freedoms and taking them away. So you have to look at crypto like a litmus test for corruption. And when countries want to ban your access to that or prevent your ability to self-custody or things like that, these are corrupt actions, right? You should have the freedom to access your own money. So sorry for that side quest, but
reach.
You know, I think it's really important, and it's relevant to the Superchain because there's strength in numbers, right? And when I saw Coinbase create the Base network and join the Superchain, their ecosystem is around Coinbase and all the tools and consumer tools they built around Coinbase. And that's phenomenal. Optimism is kind of like the king around here, the leader, you know, that builds a lot of the technology that we also collaborate on. You have other networks like Redstone doing gaming, right? You have Mode doing you know, NFTs and things like that. You know, each one kind of has its own unique aspect. And the interesting aspect and unique aspect of MetalL2 is the focus on banking and fiat. And we saw that as a really big problem for the space. And Base coming into the Superchain was a huge part of opening, you know, cracking that open. For us with MetalL2, we've done so much work with traditional banks, credit unions, TradFi institutions. We're building these tools. We want to start to bridge that gap. So you would come as adapt to the MetalL2 network because of all of the fiat tools, banking partners and connections that are coming here to build on this platform. And eventually, we want MetalL2 to be what we call the banking layer. The Superchain is connected, but when it comes to fiat and real-world assets being able to come in and out of the chain, this is what MetalL2 and Metallicus really focuses on, where we've cut our teeth. And you know, when you look at some of the on and off ramps, we really want to make it a seamless process. So when you launch your dApp, we want you to be able to accept credit cards, debit cards, bank payments, wires, and we want it to be seamless. We don't want other people's branding all over it. We want it to be your app. We really want it to feel like it's just this incredible experience. When you plug into MetalL2, you're now connected to the traditional financial world. And it's not some gatekeeper standing between you. It's a whole network. We want the only thing standing between you and the bank and the TradFi institution is the open and transparent ledger that connects you to it, right? And Metallicus is building the tools around that. So in the future, if you want to launch an app that has that connection to TradFi, to fiat, and the ramping, and also, you know, something that is maybe, I guess, an unsexy topic in crypto is what I call RegTech, or the compliance tools. And, you know, maybe in the beginning, the past few years, these were things that were kind of an afterthought. But now, as the regulations are changing, you have MiCA in Europe and you have FIT 21 that could potentially pass in the US. We have to, you know, now that crypto is treated as money, we have to comply with the rules around money. It doesn't mean that we can't be open source and permissionless, but we may need to have digital identity or different things, you know, built around that stack. And Metallicus is building the most frictionless, least intrusive and powerful tools to empower your users to have access to the data while also allowing you to comply with the laws around money. And I think that in the past, it was kind of a, you know, break things and ask for forgiveness later. But we've learned that now that the groundwork's really being laid, we know what we need to do. So the question is, from a product standpoint and an app developer standpoint in your company, how do I make it the best? How do I leverage this to make it an amazing experience? Instead of thinking about it as this thing that's kind of limiting my app, how do I protect my users? How can I get my user to recover a private key? How can I prevent someone from being scammed, right? How can I keep the people's funds safe? And all of that goes hand in hand with interacting with TradFi. So as we make those tools available, that interaction with TradFi is seamless. In the past, there was a lot of friction there because people would say, well, I don't want to KYC or I don't want to do these things. But in the reality is, most people are more concerned about their data being compromised or lost or mishandled. And if it's done right, then it's an incredible experience. If in 5 years from now we could say people don't lose private keys anymore, wouldn't that be a multi-billion dollar, potentially multi-trillion dollar into the decades to come solution that could really solve a lot of things? And when you see some of the failures of the older system or the trad system, we should be able to own our own money, right? But it comes with those risks of losing your keys, getting scammed, having a piece of faulty software that you didn't lose your keys, but the app just glitched or did something that was very scary. So we have to make better tools around that. And I think that a lot of that is around just having the right tools, having the right partners, and Superchain, with each one of these niches, I think provides that. And Metallicus is just very excited to be that bridge to TradFi.
Yeah, awesome. As a user, especially someone who works in DeFi, I get paid on chain, and every month I have to, I'll have to pay my credit card off and pull money off chain into my bank account. It's always stressful. It's always a bit of a hassle. And going the other direction, trying to onboard people, I'm all of my friends, I'm like, hey, I try and plant the seeds of DeFi in their head, and trying to onboard them. It's like, okay, create an account here, KYC here. Then you're going to have to make sure you keep track of this wallet address. Don't put your private key anywhere on your computer. Write it down on a pen and paper. Like, they're like, okay, I think there's 10 to 20 steps before they can even get on chain and start actually using applications. So like I said, solving the hard problems of just smoothing out and lubricating these rails between traditional finance, what people are familiar with, and the on-chain world with things like decentralized identities. I tip my hat to anyone really solving these problems, and things like regulatory compliance, the non-sexy aspect of this. It's very, very important work that I guess the average user doesn't really take into account a lot of the time. It's like, oh, I just want to go 100x long some coin. But there's a lot of stuff that has to go into that on the background. Okay, so let's talk about a bit of the features of the MetalL2 and some of the sort of peripheral or adjacent products that you've built that are going to live on MetalL2. So you mentioned MetalX. I was also reading about the XMD stablecoin. You mentioned MetalPay. And then there's also this WebAuth sort of application, if I can call it that, as well. So, oh, did he leave? Oh no. Okay, he's back. We're good. All right, you're back. All good.
I lost the application.
Okay, yeah. So, anyways, some of these the features that are integrated into MetalL2. Do you want to talk about them a little bit? And I'll have a follow up for you later. But why don't you start with the WebAuth? I think a lot of people are excited about that, and sort of what users can expect in terms of actually going on the network and using it.
Yeah. When it comes to crypto wallets, I think there are a lot of options, right? And one of the things that has become very popular in the world of crypto are hardware wallets. So having a secure enclave in your device that doesn't access any other part of the device, that can't be easily hacked, or the keys extracted from the keys never leave that SE, right? And so it's interesting because a lot of people have turned to these devices, but in 2024, they're actually in your phone, right? And Apple has built also around Android devices, passkeys has become very popular, a new standard for linking these secure enclaves between devices and being able to have this unified experience where when I go to pay for something, when it comes to let's just use Apple Pay, for example, all my information is stored in the cloud and connected through passkeys, and I can sign on any one of my devices. So how do we create that really sticky, awesome Apple-like experience for crypto? Because you mentioned it earlier, it's very scary for a non-user to say, no, write down your 24-word seed and, don't lose this or lose all your money. So how do we make that part easier? And also, in general, when it comes to, for example, having a Chrome plugin or something like that, how do I not leave the browser? Just from a product perspective, if I'm in a dApp, the developer of that dApp and the team behind that dApp would prefer that you don't have to really leave the browser. Anytime you switch out or you go to something else, it's very easy for you to get distracted and to leave and to not come back, right? So you want to keep the user's attention focused, and you also want to have good security. So good UX, good UI, good security, and let's keep the user focused in the product. So what that would
all the complexity out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And how do we use the existing hardware that we love? Right? Like I love Apple. I love my iPhone, my iPad. If I have to introduce new external third-party devices, which, there's definitely time and a place for that, right? But for many users, we want to have that same experience that we already have with our devices. So with WebAuth, we saw this vision, with web authentication that we believe at Metallicus that this is the future of payments and digital authentication. And we really bet big on that a few years ago when we started with WebAuth, because we could see that that was where we believed that the industry is going. And sure enough, Apple and Google and everyone followed on and started integrating passkeys and integrating this technology. We're really excited to see that. Apple opened up their SDK. And so we started to, when we built WebAuth, we had that vision of how can we have a wallet that's extremely secure, more secure than the average wallet, using the secure enclave of the device without leaving the app. I just want a Face ID. When I go to send a payments, when I go to send a crypto payment, I just want a Face ID. I don't want to have to leave my app. I don't want to leave the app. When I add funds from my fiat account, my bank account, again, Face ID. I don't want to type out all this information. I don't want to go to a separate app. And that's going to create the amazing crypto experience. If I ever lose my private key, I want a Face ID, maybe some additional biometric thing that's beyond the normal Face ID, just to make sure hacker's not stealing my funds. But
eyeball scanning?
Eyeball scanning, right? But you know what? Maybe it's cumbersome to have a device that I have to have on top of all these devices that I already have. And maybe I've already kind of bet my horse on Apple or Google or one of these platforms. So we just saw, the opportunity to have this web authentication with the wallets is a massive, massive opportunity. And with our vision with WebAuth, we don't want you to leave the browser. So when you're on the Superchain network, you're using WebAuth, you're signing things with your Face ID, with your Touch ID. In the future, you'll be able to have biometric key recovery and things like that. I shouldn't have to go to another window or open up another app. And also, how do we prevent scams and things like that? And a lot of these scammers and attackers will try to exploit people's private keys through soliciting them for their seed input or different things. So how do we prevent all that stuff from happening while increasing the security and user experience? And that's WebAuth. So WebAuth started on XPRNetwork, where we were able to really launch with web authentication natively in the network. And then we brought that to Metal Blockchain recently. And so now the mobile app supports Metal Blockchain, and we're working towards now having web authentication support for the EVM. And when that opens up, I think it's going to just be a phenomenal experience because you no longer have to hit, switch apps, go to the Chrome plugins tab, anything like that. It's all native, right? And if you want to have a piece of hardware, like a FIDO compliant piece of hardware, whether that's a YubiKey, and Yubi has a ton of amazing options, biometric options. There's so many FIDO devices, but there's not that many crypto hardware wallets. But again, almost all the crypto hardware wallets are also FIDO compliant. So I want to use my hardware wallet or my YubiKey as an additional layer of authentication. Sure, it never hurts to have more security especially when it comes to very high value transaction or something like that. So we built in that technology, and we plan to launch web authentication for the Superchain and for EVMs. And pretty soon you'll be doing crypto transactions in the browser with minimal to no gas fees, using account abstraction, and a lot of the tools that people are building for the Superchain. We're leveraging that to integrate with web authentication. So we think it's a new standard for wallets. And I also will say that I've seen, I believe, Coinbase Wallet and Trust Wallet, Coinbase and Binance, some of the bigger players in the space, experimenting with passkeys as well. So I predict in a few years, almost every wallet will probably have passkeys, but WebAuth.com is definitely a pioneer.
WebAuth.com. You heard it here first, folks. Well, maybe not first. I see a lot of fans in the chat, so probably not. Thank you all for joining, by the way. Yeah, so let's outline maybe a little bit of a user journey, or like the optimal user journey, the North Star in terms of getting on and off Metal L2. So I'm a user. I bridge from Optimism. I go to WebAuth.com. There I can have all of my login credentials, everything really easy. I can sign in with Google or Apple or something like this. Everything is abstracted. I can sign transactions with a Face ID. Gas. What about gas? So you mentioned that gas could be subsidized or completely free. Is that something? Is that like a long-term play, or do you want to just explain that a bit more?
Yeah, I'm really excited about account abstraction and some of the newer EIPs. The Superchain as an L2 has made Ethereum really awesome in terms of the user experience again, because as the L1 has scaled, it has moved, like when you flash back to the early days of Bitcoin, people talked about buying a cup of coffee with Bitcoin. Now you would never do that because the transaction fee is like 5 times the price of the cup of coffee, right? So there are L2s like Lightning on Bitcoin, and on Ethereum you have Optimism, Arbitrum, you have CK, Sync, you have different L2s. I love the Superchain because it's this collaborative network, right? And you, like I said earlier, you have each Superchain network has their own niche. Now, when it comes to low gas fees and fast and feeless transactions, that's something that really excites me and excites the team at Metallicus, because that is the future that I think makes sense. So, when crypto launched, you're an early participant. So paying some transaction fees or some gas fees is like, okay, this is my hobby. This is fun. I'll do it, right? Especially if you're making a trade. It's like, well, maybe I'll make it back on the trade, right? The gas fees shouldn't be that bad. And there have been times at high gas load when people are taking some pretty wild bets on trades, with a high gas fee, right? We always like to laugh about that. But in the Superchain now, the fees are very low. So when you do pay a fee, it's infinitesimal. It's pennies, right? It's not dollars or tens of dollars or $100. But how can we go even further? How can we make it so in most scenarios you may not even have to pay any gas at all? And I remember the early days of Uniswap where you're paying huge fees, and then eventually they kind of started to change some things where you're basically signing a message, so you don't actually have to do a transaction on chain, and it's saving you some money on gas fees and optimizing there, right? So there's a lot of different tricks and different things we can use to optimize and avoid the fees. And these are things that we're very interested in. Account abstraction is a big one because I believe that it really opens the door for the potential to have feeless transactions. And I believe that networks like the Superchain are really the gateway where, you probably should in the future be able to do almost everything feeless. And if not, it shouldn't cost more than a penny or two, right? And so that's, with WebAuth, we want to get to that point where when I make a transaction, if I'm sending some money, it should be better than the traditional system. It should be faster than Zelle. It should be faster than Venmo. And ultimately, these platforms, I predict, will integrate decentralized ledger and technology like the Superchain. They will ultimately integrate. It might have to be through something like Metal Blockchain or a private ledger that connects to a public ledger, but I do see that coming. And with WebAuth, we really want to have that experience that you have with any traditional platform. If anything, I think you should be seeing the benefits, like when we launched MetalPay, you should be getting something back, right? You should be getting something out of it. And I think that that is one of the interesting things about the open ledger. As we evolve this technology, we make account abstraction more of a popular everyday thing that's being used. How do we also create a better experience around digital rewards, cash back, things like that? Right now you choose a credit card based upon your brands that you like. Maybe I fly a lot, so I use a JetBlue card, or I use a Apple card, or whatever brands I like that are affiliated with that. But in the future, all that's going to be broken out. And the physical card, that'll go away. It already has. Your wallet is already your phone, and any cards you need are probably like a magnetic thing that sticks to the back of it, right? And very few people are carrying paper cash. I envision a day in which it will be easier and make more sense to get crypto than it would be to go to an ATM. And ATMs are the future phone booths, where you will see them ripped out. They'll be gone. The 5 to 10 years from now, they'll be gone. And we will have stablecoins. We'll have CBDC. We may not even need CBDC because the existing crypto ecosystem has innovated so much around that there may not be a point to even really have or use CBDC. And I've seen some of our politicians say, we don't want that. And people have asked me what I think about that. And I will say, we've got USDC, we've got XMD, we have PayPal dollar. So as we get more clarity around regulations around that and more financial institutions come into that, I expect that everything should be fast and feeless and free. And we have to get to we have to get to that experience if crypto is going to become the new standard for money and payments.
Yeah. Wow, nice. You're coming with the heat. So much to unpack in every section. So really awesome. Let's talk a bit about some ecosystem development for Metal L2. So sort of coming off of talks about making the user experience as easy and seamless as possible in terms of on and off ramping, in terms of using a wallet, in terms of free transactions, things like this. What are your plans for onboarding dApps, onboarding builders, getting an ecosystem built out, and any other kind of ecosystem on the network, and onboarding users? I do want to shout out now the Velodrome integration. As I saw Velodrome is going to be coming to Metal L2, so that's huge. I know we've got a ton of Velodrome fans, myself included, and users. So that's a really pretty awesome head start, I guess. But yeah, what are your plans for onboarding more apps? What kind of apps do you want to see, and how do you attract builders onto the network?
Yeah, I think there's several ways, and shout out to the Ace and the Velodrome team. Amazing DEX platform, one of the top and best platforms out there, and we're honored to have them on the Metal L2. When we started reaching out to different dApps, DEXs, DeFi lending protocols, SocialFi, we started reaching out to these different protocols. One of the things that we found that was really a positive signal for us was that all these tools around the fiat side are very interesting, because at the end of the day, whether you're doing SocialFi, whether you're doing gaming, whether you're trading on the DEX, you are going to touch your bank, right? And you are going to touch your traditional financial tools, right? And whether it's your bank, whether it's your credit card. So having access to the integrations that it can allow you to move back and forth, like we spoke about at the beginning, that's a very attractive thing, right? But then on top of that, the Metal DAO, similar to Optimism, has its own DAO and DeFi funding mechanism. That was something that the network voted on recently and approved, DAO Treasury. So not only is there the DAO funding and treasury for builders to come onto our platform, but there's also the retro PGF. And a lot of the, I believe almost all the Superchain networks have this. So that is something that's very appealing. But one of the unique elements that I would say about the Metal L2 are really those fiat connections, the identity and reg tech tools. And betting on Metal 2 is like saying I'm betting that traditional finance will someday merge with the blockchain. So you come to build onto Metal L2 because not only do you want those tools, but you believe that in the future, maybe banks and credit unions and financial institutions will directly integrate blockchain technology. And the place that they would probably do that would be at a place like Metal Blockchain, Metal L2, where all the tools are built and the relationships are already pre-existing. So it's very exciting for a lot of the DeFi dApps, especially, that see this as a potential to connect to these platforms. I envision in the future that banks, credit unions, different platforms will have these connections, and it will be a much more seamless process. Right now, we rely on exchanges and different platforms to do our custody, to do trading. And as this on-chain revolution starts, I think a lot of those are going to default back to the banking world. And it makes sense, if you have, let's say you had some absurd amount of Bitcoin, right? Let's say Laszlo never bought the pizza and he had $1 billion, right? Would Laszlo like to keep it under his bed or even have the keys at home or different things like that? And everybody has their own methods of handling these. But it's, that is one of the things that the bank does well, right? And you can go put this information in your safety deposit box, but what if there were more technology tools and more security built around that? And what if the banks and credit unions and financial services companies could offer you services that would leverage that, right? So like you mentioned, you get paid on chain. Well, in the future, that can evolve to be streaming payments. So you're getting paid by the second, by the minute, and it's going right into your bank account. In the past, we got paid biweekly. We'd be waiting for the check to hit. Maybe we use some platform that's integrated with like Zenefits, for example. We get the consumer app and it gets there faster, or we use something that gets there 2 days earlier. But I would like to see it instant. And if you deposit a penny into my account, I shouldn't have to pay a gas fee, and it should be right in my checking account. And I said it earlier, we'll know when we've hit it when ATMs are no longer relevant, when the experience of crypto, people don't even know they're using it, right? And I think that we're getting there. And the Superchain, to me, really represents that, because it's everybody working towards this. We're doubling down on Ethereum, where 90% or I don't know if it's 90, but it's close. Most of all the TVL is there. And yes, there are other networks, and I'm a multi-chain guy. I believe in multiple networks. But with Ethereum, you have the shared security, you have the #1 programmability layer, and then all these partners working together. I think the potential to connect the traditional world of finance to that is going to be a revolutionary thing. And for us to get to that point where you don't know you're using it, we need that piping underneath, right?
Yeah. I've been telling friends and people that I'm trying to onboard that, like, whatever the outcome looks like, this tech is inevitable. So it's going to be utilized by someone, and then eventually everyone. I've been telling them, like, even if you're not interested at all, or even if it's just not something you want to pay attention to, or you just, you're not a money person, a finance person at all, you will be using it in the future, and you probably won't even know that you're using it. So that's the North Star in my head. Okay, I've got a bit of a hardball for you. How do you navigate conversations with truly DeFi native and decentralization maxis who go, me writing my passphrase on a piece of paper and me fully custodying my assets is why I'm in crypto, and like not having a single custodian in my world, that's why I'm in crypto, and that's my sort of ethos. How have you been navigating those conversations? And have you has that been a big challenge in terms of like trying to convey the fact that banks are going to still exist, and in order for us to get mass adoption, we need to get them in the door somehow, and we need to build out Rails so they can actually use this tech. I know it's a tough question, but have you been kind of thinking about that, and has it posed a bit of a challenge in terms of building out like an L2?
Yeah, I do get this. I do see this a lot, and I do get this question every now and then. And my answer is, I applaud you, right? If that's what you're doing, I'm 100% behind you, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why I'm so excited about it. Because now, for the first time in history, for the first time ever, we have money that can't be counterfeited. Prior to cryptocurrency and the blockchain, you have counterfeit, and you still have it today. So just to start there is a huge thing, right? And then when it comes to the individual ownership, if you went to your bank today, let's say you had $100,000 in your bank and said, I'm going to need that now. Let's see what happens. Let's see how quickly you can get it, because chances are it's going to be very hard to get that. They're not going to just let you withdraw $100,000 cash. It's going to be a lot of questions involved. And if you do manage to get it, your bank account is probably being shut down. And furthermore, maybe you don't want that access. But one of the things about crypto is that you can have that capability. And so being empowered to have that freedom is incredible. We've not just like we solved counterfeit with the Byzantinian general's fault tolerance problem, which is the origins of Bitcoin. We now also solved that problem as well. Is it possible that I could custody all of my crypto? From there, there's two different camps, right? There's the camp of the techie and the developer, which is going in the direction that you're talking about, using multi-sigs and different technologies that are more P2P related. And I completely endorse that. So sometimes people approach me and say, oh, you're just trying to take this away from us. Believe me when I say I am fighting for that, for you to empower that. And then the other camp is your mom and dad, your sister, your cousin, who may not be in crypto and they want to have a good experience the first time. And when I first discovered Bitcoin in late 2009, I remember it was maybe early 2010, and I was in Boston, and it was like the first couple of weeks of it was like, I want to say it was like January or so, and I'm trying to decipher what is Bitcoin, how does it work. My brain could not comprehend that this system was magic beans. I was like, so who's connecting with it now? Has anyone, I guess when I see a new technology, I get really excited that if it's something I think is really interesting. It was confusing to me that okay, here's all these opcodes that Bitcoin can do, but it doesn't have a traditional API like PayPal or SDK or something like that. And we just have this distributed ledger. What's one Bitcoin worth or one ETH worth? Or one metal worth? It's what the open and free and fair market is willing to pay for it, right? And as we move on chain, those systems become more and more transparent, more and more decentralized. True price discovery can really happen, because in the past, if everything is centralized exchanges, you are relying on the trust of those. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I believe as the technology evolves, all centralized exchanges, I believe, will go on chain. Big prediction, but I believe that will happen. And I think we're at the very early days of it, and Superchain is a pioneer in that and a keystone in that. But I think it's very important for us to evolve our existing system, because if tomorrow the banks cease to exist and you know, if your bank called you tomorrow and said, come pick up all your cash, and you wait in this big line to get your cash, it's going to be a nightmare, right? It's going to be a nightmare. It's not a fun, awesome thing. And that's what we realized over time. At the same time, what also would be a bad thing is if we weren't allowed to custody our own money and our own cryptos. That's the inverse of it, right?
Yeah.
If you were forced, you weren't allowed to have these things. So and like everything, we want to find the balance. We want to find the right balance of, you know, ownership. And so when you know, in the future, I would love to be able to, you know, tell my family, oh, you know, open an account at this bank, you can custody your crypto there, and here's where you trade on the Superchain. You can use Velodrome and MetalL2. You can use Aerobase on Base Network. You can use MetalPay. You can use Coinbase. You can have all these different options. But the average user should feel comfortable with it, that when they take their crypto journey, that not only does this work with all the legacy systems, but it works better than anything I've ever seen before. And I think right now we're still at the early phase where we have the technology empowers us to do all these things, but the experience maybe is not there yet. It still is a little bit of a rough road about learning how public and private keys work and all this stuff works. So what we want to do is we want to build more robust systems for those that are familiar with how these things work and are more empowered and can use the P2P tools. At the same time, those same people that are, you know, might be like a cypherpunk, you want to do everything on chain, every now and then you're gonna have to swipe a card. And when you do, it should be easy. And for everybody else that's not in that camp, that wants the, you know, the really, that Apple-like, or, you know, you just want to trust a brand and you want it to be good, then it should be very good and it should interact with the bank. So it really should serve everyone. And anyone that says, oh, you know, you can't do this, well, we live in the real world. And like I said, if we were to rip out either one, you rip out all the blockchain infrastructure, all the banking infrastructure, we would have a terrible, terrible time, right?
Yeah.
So how do we make them play nice together, work nice together, and empower us? At the end of the day, people want to preserve and grow their wealth. They want to have, they want to secure their assets. They want to feel safe. And we're getting to the very early parts of that right now.
Yeah. They want to have an easy time doing it. Yeah, I hope to see a future where it's like you can choose your level of involvement, because all of the people that I was talking to, everybody who I talked to, you know, 99% of people have no idea what I'm saying. And they're just like, look, man, I don't care about finance. And you know, like, how could you know? But they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to think about it. And so for those people, they need, you know, they need a way to benefit from these systems, but have, you know, not have to think about things they don't want to think about. And I hope that can kind of be balanced with a maintenance of the option to custody everything, and just a nice range of, you know, very public, very decentralized blockchains to, you know, institutions running their own blockchains and just making their operations extremely fast, extremely easy, extremely sort of interoperable. So yeah, I hope, you know, too far in either direction is not going to turn out very well. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. Okay. Wow, we're approaching an hour. That's crazy. It's gone so fast. I did want to ask about, I read your report, your Q1 report, and I wanted to ask about one part of it, which was the so-called A-chain development. And I think that's the blockchain, the Metal blockchain becoming a subnet. Is that the right word? I guess it's an extension of the Metal L2. So can you talk a little bit about that and what the purpose of the Metal blockchain being this kind of third layer built on top of Metal L2?
Yeah, absolutely. So XPRNetwork, when we started it 4 years ago in 2020, the vision was to make, it was originally actually called XID for Decentralized Identity Network. And then I changed the name because it didn't sound that awesome. Maybe people were going to interpret it right. But XPR has proven itself as a really robust network that solves a lot of the problems with some of the other networks, such as MEV, miner extracted value, gas fees, obviously resources. You know, when we looked at EOS in the very early days in Antelope, we thought, hey, that's a really cool technology. And I think Vitalik even said it's Ethereum on steroids at one point. I remember him tweeting something about that. He's a appreciator of multiple chains. But we saw that, you know, there's a really great model with Antelope there in terms of resources. We built out XPRNetwork and we changed some things from the way that the other Antelope networks work, but didn't really deviate so much from the code base. It was more around the DAO, the way things were operated, resources were handled. We changed some of the core code. Ultimately, we recognized when we were building Metal Blockchain that we're attracting institutions, banks, credit unions, traditional finance to build private ledgers that talk to each other, right? And not every bank, not every credit union, not every institution wants the same technology. Some may want EVM, and some may say, I need something that MEV is impossible with, or can handle RAM better, right? Or bandwidth better. Or maybe the opposite direction. Maybe I want something, I just need pure Bitcoin opcodes. I just want a pure fork of Bitcoin, but without the proof of work, and my bank runs that network, right? And so as we start to build, we forked off of the Snowman protocol off Avalanche. And I think that the work of Ava Labs and Eamon Gunsier is phenomenal. And even predating them, Team Rocket, which created this code base, incredible. And that's, you know, the power of open source and blockchain. So we deviated from Avalanche because that is a public L1 that has many different aspects that's focused on gaming, different areas. And they are doing stuff with banks more recently, I saw. But our focus was really around, hey, let's really build a network that the banks and financial institutions, credit unions can get on board with and have these networks. And one of the first things that we discovered was there's a different flavor for everyone. Some wanted EVM, some had specific requirements, And so when we built out XPR, we recognized, hey, this is a really phenomenal technology. Ability to, we added the ability to compile with TypeScript. So now you can, if you program in any form of JavaScript, you can basically transpile and release your source code. So each one kind
I'm pretending like I know what that means. Super cool.
Thanks. Yeah. So each institution wants its own flavor, and so AVM, the Antelope VM, is one of them. Ethereum Virtual Machine is another one, and we're also working on what we call a B chain, which is a pure fork of Bitcoin with all the Bitcoin opcodes, similar to Dogecoin as well, Litecoin as well.
Cool.
And so we want it, and we like Cosmos too, right? I'm a big fan of Cosmos. I'm a multi-chain guy, as I've said many times, but I really believe that how we evolve as a technology is we are not tribalistic, and that we lean on each other. It's the thing that really, one of the big things that attracted me to the Superchain was that sense of community.
The modularity of the stack, being able to kind of slot things in, pull something out, improve on it, or replace it with a better system and slot another, like the different layers of the stack. Anyways, definitely modularity. I'm a modular bull, to be honest, but sorry, go on.
Exactly. Yeah. And so with the A chain and the B chain, as we're building these, we're just creating environments that replicate the most popular networks and different technologies that we think are valuable. And it's kind of like a showroom of supercars. When the banks walk in, they say, "Oh, I like that one. I like that one." It may be different, but we want to give all of the options and that capability too, that maybe you start with AVM and you migrate to EVM, or vice versa, or maybe you start with Bitcoin, you migrate to EVM. We want that technology there. So, and I actually at one point was thinking, okay, well, maybe when I was first starting, I was looking at the EVM and thinking, there's got to be some sort of way to bridge it back to the Ethereum L1 where it can really connect with the greater ecosystem. And the more I researched and the more I thought about it, I realized that the Superchain is that, right? And that's the ultimate bridge. And there's lots of interesting stuff happening on Solana and Cosmos and other ecosystems. But I'd be lying if I said the majority of it is happening. It's happening on Ethereum, right? And on the L2s. The majority of the DeFi activity is there. That's where it is. So yeah, having those different flavors, but at the end of the day, connecting back to that. And like I said, having, for example, like a Bitcoin clone, it makes it easier when you're, if you had a piece of wallet software, and just like I can with MetaMask or WebAuth, for example, I can switch between networks. That should be a seamless experience as well, right? Just being able to switch between, for example, maybe I'm on a Bitcoin subnet that's owned by a bank, and then I switch networks to main Bitcoin subnet after I've bridged it over. Again, all this stuff is going to get easier and easier from the UI perspective. But for you as a customer, it just comes down to how easy is it to use? Is it safe? And does it work with all the brands and companies and institutions that I trust, right?
Yeah. Well said. I'm going to throw this up. Go to metal-l2.com, folks, and read all about it. Okay. So what I want to do to kind of round this out, and as we close this out, is bring it back to the user level. So talk a bit about what users can do now, and maybe some call to actions in terms of getting on the chain. We mentioned Velodrome getting on. Some other maybe developments that you want to mention, if you have any alpha to share, no pressure. Just I guess a call to action to users to get on, start using the network, and start experiencing what the beginnings of what you've been describing. I was also going to ask about user incentives. If you guys are issuing any grants or anything like this, can you talk about maybe what users should be looking forward to and what they can do now?
Absolutely. So we're still in the early days, right? Our mainnet is live, so you can get on it today. You can go to metal-l2.com. You can add it to MetaMask. You can use the WebAuth wallet, which we're just about to launch the Metal-L2 natively for mobile. I don't know if that's pushed to app and Play Store, but it should be shortly. But so there's two different incentives. There's the developer community. If you're building a dApp or building a DAO or building some sort of technology, go to Metal-L2, contact us. Message us on Twitter, message us through our website. We'd love to help you. We'd love to connect you and help us paint our shared vision, how we can work together to help bridge that gap around the TradFi side and fiat side. But also, we want to help you build a great user experience. We're there for you every step of the way. And there are grants for builders. So if you are building, you can come right now. And if you go to Metal-L2, you'll find our link. We have a DAO dashboard that's on XPR right now. We're about to start to migrate and do more activity on Metal-L2 mainnet. But you can apply for grants right now via the Metal DAO dashboard, which you can find linked from metal-l2.com and from our X account. And there is really no hard or fast rule around applying. You basically set your grant, what you're looking for, what you plan to do. Of course, you can interface with the community and ask questions. Our community is very active and will give you feedback. But for example, Velodrome was the first one that just passed a sizable grant and an amazing dApp and team. Come over to Metal-L2 and come try it out, because if you're building something interesting, I guarantee you there's probably a grant waiting for you. On top of that, there's the Retro PGF fund. So not only you can apply to Metal-L2, but you're also eligible for an op grant as well. So there's multiple opportunities for funding. And then I will also say that, Metallicus is one of the best teams in crypto in terms of shipping products, user experience, and we're here for you to help you fine-tune your dApps, introduce you to partners. And it is kind of a big family on the Superchain. So if you're already deployed on one of these other networks or thinking about deploying on multiple networks, it's like a family over here. So we can connect you with other networks. Or if you're coming from them, let us know, because we love to work together. On the user side, we started, with MetalPay with POP. So there were years where you could earn MTL. And soon, without sharing too much alpha, you may be able to earn Metal by participating and using Metal L2 as well. So simply by coming over to the network and creating a DID or opening up a wallet, you are doing interactions that could be incentivized in the future. I don't want to say too much because it's a little early to make any announcements before that, but you can imagine that there are definitely going to be some more incentives around that. And we're talking as well with some of the developers around different things we can do to kind of spice things up as far as the DApp launches and things like that with different incentives. And I think that that's it's exciting. You see it on a lot of different networks. With our network, one thing that I think is a differentiator on top of all the tools and everything that I mentioned in the community, the Metal DAO community is very loyal, very active supporters. If you see us on X, so when you get aligned with our community Superchain, you're not only part of the Superchain, but the Metal DAO community is very much, you're going to find supporting you and pushing your stuff. But yeah, lots of incentives between the DAO grants, Retro PGF, and also Metallicus is always looking at different companies that we can partner with, and we have a wide network of partners. If you go to metallicus.com, you can see. And if that interests you, and I think there are many people in crypto that are looking for those bridges and connections, we're here to help make that for you.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, my computer's having trouble. That really great. That's definitely piques my interest as a user because there's so many networks, that can pull your attention in a lot of different directions, and it's rare that you're going to be able to jump on a network right sort of at the ground floor and right when things are popping off and be one of the early users. Like I almost never. It's like I'm all over the place, and then a network pops off and I'm already a little bit late to the party, but it's exciting to be connected to you guys right at this stage. And hint, all listeners, maybe go and check out the network and use some apps. It's probably a good idea. Yeah. What did I want to do here? Oh yeah, I was gonna say I can definitely attest to the Metal DAO, the Warriors. I don't know if they have a nickname or not, but we got a ton of support announcing the show. Everyone was hopping on, dropping comments. So shout out Metal DAO community members. Thank you guys for all the support. It's really awesome, and really good to see you guys all here. With that, we've covered pretty much what I wanted to cover. You've talked a lot. You've given us a lot of really good info. So I just want to say thank you for coming on. And if there's anything else you want to mention, I'd be happy to continue on. But before I forget, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on, and thank you everyone who joined. We got like 900 listeners right now. Shout out to all of you, the real heroes, the real MVPs. But yeah, thank you, Marshall. If there's anything else you want to touch on, please go for it.
Yeah, something I always say at most interviews, in closing, never stop learning, get involved in this space. The value of your knowledge is worth more than your coins. And be part of the community, be part of the Superchain, be part of the Metal DAO. And when you come in and you join Metal DAO, Metal Community, the Superchain network, you're never going to experience anything like this before in crypto if you haven't already, because you're going to get overwhelming support, on social channels, people signing up to your DApp and using it. Yeah, and last thing I'll say too is, it's a really pivotal time for crypto, and support freedom, support what is right. Write your congressman, write your congresswoman, write your senator, and get involved in this right now, because the fight for crypto is happening right now. And so not only learning, but also being involved in that process and supporting our freedoms to transact and to self-custody. Get behind that if you can. And thanks for having me on, Charles, and thanks to Optimist and all the viewers. It's a pleasure and great to be here.
Of course. Really nice sentiment at the end. I will second that. Yeah, everybody get active because, yeah, we're at an inflection point. So everybody do your part. And 100% go and just use DeFi. If you don't really know how things work, the best way to learn is to just get started and just get on chain and hop in Discords and just start chatting. So really good sentiment to close it out. So thank you again, Marshall. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Yeah, and this recording will be up in various places. Check out our newsletter and all of our stuff in our bio. Go to metal-l2.com. Go to metal_L2 on Twitter. And yeah, get involved. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week. And